Yates Politricks. Stevenson and Yates. Bring in the real. Yeah, the river of truth is rising. No silence, no surrender.
All right, it's about that politricking time. I'm Stevenson. I'm always here with my brother, my man, Ronald Yates. Always, we like to start the show off by saying something that we like to be grateful for. Well, I am so glad and grateful for this platform. But everybody should be, at least when they wake up in the morning, they should look for things to be grateful for, because there's always something that we can look for to be grateful for. Ashe, Ashe. So let me introduce my man, my brother, Mr. Ronald Yates. Ashe, Ashe, what's happening?
What's up, brother?
So, a lot of things been going on crazy this week in politics. I was checking out some stuff, but this man is making gold statues of himself in in Washington D.C. and he wants to build this arch, and now this ballroom is going to cost like I think it's up to $2 billion now, or somewhere close to that. That the taxpayers are now going to have to pay. And this war is still going on. The strait is not open. And he keeps saying, they keep talking about how much we won the war, and the war still seems to be going on. They say last week, I think we talked, you didn't think that the war would be going on this long, but it's still here, man. But what you got to say about all of this that's going on? I know I just laid a lot out on the table, but you know how I do.
Well, you know what? This is basically par for the course, right? This is the new reality in America. And to add insult to injury, I just saw MSNBC is reporting that the DOJ has now basically barred the IRS from ever auditing Trump, his family, or his companies into the future, into perpetuity. He can never be audited again. Even after he leaves office, the IRS is forever prohibited from looking into Trump's financial affairs, the affairs of his family and his companies. And not only that, the other day, Congress approved a $1.8 billion slush fund for Trump's allies. When we were kids, we'd hear the term "crime does not pay." Well, the truth is, crime does pay. It pays very handsomely if you are part of the Trump inner circle. Now, I would imagine that a lot of this $1.8 billion, which is taxpayer funded, will go to Trump and his family and his companies.
Right.
But for those people that he says were horribly wronged by the DOJ. And let's be clear. We're not talking about people who sat for years on death row for a crime they didn't commit. No, we're not talking about them. We're not talking about people like the former Central Park Five, right, which is now the exonerated Five. We're not talking about them either. The people he's talking about are the people who on January 6th led an insurrection against the government, which was Trump's government, forced their way into the Capitol and committed a series of crimes against law enforcement and members of Congress and, of course, the facility itself. These people are now up for a portion of this slush fund. $1.8 billion of taxpayer money is going to fund the lifestyles of criminals, people who are tried and convicted by a jury of their peers and who were rightfully sentenced for their crimes. Now, well, again, crime does pay.
Well, it seems like to me like the oppressors are getting paid, or at least the ancestors, not the predecessors of these criminals. They're the ones that's getting paid. The sons, the daughters, the whole damn family. That's why they call them. What do they call them? The Trump crime family. And that's mildly put.
Hmm.
Mildly put. Because they're more than criminals, man, with the actions and things that they've been doing. They be getting away
Uh,
with stealing billions and billions and billions of dollars from the American people. And you still got these people out here that will back him. You know,
that
we
uh,
keep going back to that LBJ thing. What we said about LBJ, what did we tell? We said that all you got to do is give him somebody to look down upon, and you
hmm.
every dollar out of his pocket. Matter of fact, he'll give you every dollar out of his pocket. Well, this guy said he loved the poorly educated because they're some of the smartest people in the world. That's an oxymoron, right? I mean, I'm
Well,
not an English major, but that sounds like an oxymoron to me.
well, you know
And
what?
these just say this about these people that he let out of jail. He let them out of jail, but they were criminals. Some of these people had 24 years. 24 years that they got slapped with for the crimes that they committed. Some of the people even confessed to the crime. They said, yes, I
Hmm.
committed a crime. I'm guilty. They confessed and said that they were guilty. So they got let, everybody gets let out. Everybody gets a free ticket except for R. Kelly, but everybody gets a free ticket. They all get out of jail for the crimes that they committed. Not only that, they're going to receive some sort of restitution for it. I don't,
Hmm.
and you know what he did to get that, right? So the 1.7 or 1.8 billion dollars was the lawsuit that he had against the IRS. So he gave them
Hmm.
an ultimatum. Gave them an ultimatum. Look, I'll drop the lawsuit, but you got to give these people the money.
Well, you know, this is all part of the Trump, I guess, mystique, right? People are still defending Trump, even when it should be clear what is happening. You know, people are, I guess it's kind of like a marriage, a bad marriage, when you know um, that you've exhausted all your options and that realistically things are not going to work, right? Sometimes marriages end for a number of reasons. But then there are times when people decide to stay in a marriage, knowing that the relationship is toxic, knowing that there is no benefit to remaining in a relationship, knowing that if you have children, the toxicity now is going to envelop your children and they're going to become part of this. But you hold on anyway. And I suspect that is the mindset of some of these MAGA, staunch MAGA, who, you know, they go to the gas pump like the rest of us. You know, they fill up their tank and it's more than nearly double what they were paying, you know, 5, 6 months ago. And, you know, they say, well, you know what, it's okay because it was high under Biden as well. That is the logic, right? You know, they don't really try necessarily to defend Trump because a lot of what he does is indefensible. So they try to rationalize it by saying, well, you know what? It was just as bad under Biden. You know,
You
we
know,
say
I'm
when
gonna
we
tell you.
go to vote, we say we go to vote, we have to choose between the lesser of two evils. My question is, it's an evil. Why the hell are we choosing between two evils? Why can't we choose between a good and an evil, right? We have put ourselves in a position now where we're going to go to the polls and select between two evil people and
Now you
decide,
got
well, who's the least evil?
look. Most people don't. They don't vote with their heads, man. They vote based on their emotion, how they feel at the particular time. That's how they vote. Look, the man can come out and say something like, "Well, I hate trans people, and why should there be trans people in sports, and why should there be trans people?" And I have to ask people, how many trans people do you know? I don't know any. So we've made that a priority instead of making a priority. I don't know. Let's say of healthcare. I don't know, SNAP programs. The man stood up on stage and said he don't have any money for that. We don't have any money for Medicare. See, we've forgotten about the social needs, survival skills that we need in order to survive in this country. All of us are going to need a good education. All of us are going to need good medical care. All of us are going to need good housing, a good job with a decent pay. We need all these things, but we forgot that collectively we need these things. And we've broken off as individuals to say, well, I can't vote for this person because they're not pro-life, or I can't vote for this person because they like trans people, or I can't vote for this person because they're not a Christian. All of these are based on your moralities, and all of that is really subjective. All you got to do is say, look, let me use my mind and see what we need within our community, and let me vote that way. It don't care if it's Republican. I don't care if it's Democrat. Like I told you before, once that person is in that seat, it's that person's responsibility to take care of his community. Now, I don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat. If I come to that person with a problem and I'm a citizen of this community, it's his job to help me. But it's our job as a community to make them help us. We got to show up for the town hall meetings. We got to show up at their office. I got this guy Tom with Bresnan. I got him calling me. Somebody want to have a conference call. I don't particularly want to have a conference call with him. He kind of screwed me up around with my taxes, and then he voted yes for the better bill, whatever they call it, the big beautiful whatever that bill is. That's destroying everybody. That's a part of that 2025. What do you call that thing? Where they want to
Project 2025.
Right there, he signed off on that, so I can't hang with him. Then you got the Heritage Foundation; they're doing their thing. They got all these opposing things to keep us again from voting. So if voting was not important, then why are they trying to suppress our vote like they did with Alabama? You see what happened in Alabama, and these things these things become like the snowball effect, like we talked about before, them doing away with civil rights. So yeah, well, maybe we should afford for maybe not integration, but maybe we should afford for human rights, because that's something you can't change. But a civil right, it's a law. Next person come along, they change the law. And that's pretty much what's gone down. Here we gone years after the civil rights, and we were both here during that time. So I remember what it was kind of like. It wasn't the best times for us, right? So they made this law, and now here it is. They've taken that law away. They've taken away the DEI. They've taken away the affirmative action. So again, it's not so much that we shouldn't vote. We got to vote. You got to vote, because remember we talked about that either by the bullet or the ballot, and I don't think we're ready for that revolution. So the only alternative is to vote, or we could boycott, or we could do certain things. But still, it comes down to where we're going to have to vote. And the way we need to vote is utilizing our heads more than what's in our heart. We got to look at what our needs are for our community. Lower gas prices.
I think it's important to understand that when LBJ signed the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, before the ink was dry on those documents, the attack was already being formulated, how to roll back what had just been signed by the president. And this is not about voting rights. This is not about civil rights. This is about survival of a people. When you talk about the Heritage Foundation, when you talk about Project 2025, the agenda is clear. They want to roll time back. They want to go back to a time when white power, white supremacy meant something in this country. They want to go back to a time when there was no right to vote for Black people. There weren't no civil rights. There weren't even human rights. And that's what's at stake. And, when you talk about voting and using our heads, the reality is, if we're going to vote, we have to find someone who's going to adequately represent us. And of course, what we see happening in Louisiana, in Alabama, Mississippi, and some of these other deep southern states, they are trying to ensure that we never have representation. And the reality is, most Black people in this country are registered as Democrats, for the most part, by and large. And we go out and we support the Democratic Party. But the reality is, We need people who are going to fight for our right to exist, not the right to vote, not the right to spend your money at some upscale department store, but the right to exist in this country. You know, let's be realistic. We all saw what was happening with these massive roundups that the Trump administration put in place. What did those people look like? Yes, they look like us. Yes, we might speak a different language, be it Creole or Spanish or some other language, but they look like us. These people were denied any and every constitutional right, every human right, put on planes and taken a country they've never been in or haven't been in 30, 40 years or more. In fact, there is a gentleman out in Kansas. He is a former mayor of a town in Kansas, a staunch Trump supporter who is right now sitting in an ICE detention facility awaiting extradition to Mexico, a country he hasn't been in 40 years. And this guy is a green card holder. He's a legal resident. And still, he's sitting in an ICE facility in Kansas awaiting deportation. 40 years in this country, built a life, married, family, small business, former mayor of the town. But none of that matters. Constitutional rights don't matter. What part of the Constitution is the Trump administration following?
None. But I'm going to tell you something. The Supreme Court and other courts have said he's doing wrong. And he still continues on that train. But there are so many lawsuits that are being presented against this man. They don't have time to keep up with all of them. So I know that there are dozens and dozens of lawsuits in there. I think it was like 10,000 lawsuits that were actually in, and they still haven't they got to maybe about 1,200 of them. So while they're clearing up these law cases, he's still rolling on the train, committing more crimes.
The fact of the matter is, Trump has been dealing with lawsuits for 50 years. This is not something that is new to Trump. Trump has been sued pretty much by everybody. He doesn't care, because what Trump does, he ties the litigation up in court for years. And time right now is not necessarily on Trump's side, because his support is deteriorating rapidly. People that are the staunchest Trump supporters, they're trying hard, but how do you defend the fact that gas is $4.50 a gallon? You could talk about Biden and say, well, it was high under Biden. Okay, but it's high now. So if it was high under Biden, was it wrong then and right now? People are suffering right now. People can't put gas in their car and food on the table right now. So by telling people, well, it was high 3 years ago or a year ago, that's great. What am I going to do to feed my kids tonight? That is my immediate consideration. How do I put food on the table tonight? I don't really care what happened 6 months ago or 6 years ago. I need to survive through the night. And how am I going to do that? And for a lot of Trump supporters, that reality is setting in for them. We're not talking about the super wealthy. We're talking about people who live paycheck to paycheck. We're talking about people who have to make a decision: gas or food, tuition or pay the light bill. So for them, right, when Trump started the war that he said he wouldn't start, when Trump engrossed himself in foreign affairs, when he said, I'm going to focus on America first. So his time is not on his side. So what is Trump doing? Trump is fleecing America. $1.8 billion. You think that's for those people? Trump said, and he repeated it, I don't think about the finances of the American people. So he's telling you exactly where his focus is. He don't give a damn about these people. That $1.8 billion, probably the bulk of it, will go to Trump, his family, and his companies. When you talk about the fact that we went to Venezuela and kidnapped a democratically elected president, What we don't talk about is the fact that Trump seized oil tankers, sold
Where's
the
the money?
contents of the oil tankers. Where's the money? All the money from Doge that Trump said he was saving the American taxpayers. Where's that money? Where's it all going? And the problem is Trump and those around him keep us distracted while he robs this country blind. And by the time Trump decides to take off running and get on his $400 million gift from Kuwait, it'll be too late. The bank will have been robbed blind. There'll be nothing left for the American people. And these same people that supported him will now have to come to grips with, what have we done? What do we do now? There's nothing left. And, what is Trump doing for them?
Nothing. He's not doing anything except for what he's doing for himself. He's enriching himself. He's enriching the people that are around him. Because all of them are crooks. Remember we talked about what's the woman's name? Christy Knowles. What was it? $143 million are still unaccounted for. And how much more money is there that's not being accounted for? And then the money that they are counting, they're counting the money that's going to the Trump family. Billions and billions of dollars, trillions of dollars here. But then they turn around and they'll tell you, because we've been hoodwinked, as my man would say, that they'll tell you we don't have enough money for you. We don't. We can't help your children with our SNAP program. We can't do that. But we want you to go along with us with this war. We want you to support us and back us with this war. Even though it may cost you more in your pocket, it may hurt a little bit more, but we still want your support and want you to back us in a war that we started, because the Straits was not closed prior to us. Boom, boom, boom. They want us to support that, but they're not feeling any of the crunch. They're kids, their people. What do they make? What contribution, what hurt and pain are they got? Except for the money, because gas prices and stuff going up. Everything else is going up. So except for the monies that are going already to their billionaires and millionaires friends, they're going to get more money out of this. The war, right? We said war, you make money, right? They're going to make more money. The gas companies, the Exxon, the BPs, the OPEC, all of these people are going to make tons of money off of this. Now, here's my question. So if we live in a society that we're free as far as, what did he call it? As far as energy is concerned, we're supposed to be free because we could actually produce more oil than what we use. We produce so much oil, we sell oil. We extract it. We're gone out of the country. We don't bring it in. We don't import. We don't have to import because we have so much. So why are our gas prices going up? If all of this stuff is supposed to be hurting the people around the world over there, why are our gas prices going up? Why can't we use that drill, baby, drill? Why can't we use our own oil that we have a surplus of? Because of 10 years or something like that, right?
One answer: greed, corporate greed, right?
Yeah.
Yes, in this country, we have an oil surplus, so much so that we are attempting to flood the market with U.S. oil. Why? Because for many years, one of the long-term strategic plans of the government was to drive Russia out of the oil business. Russia supplies much of the oil for Eastern Europe, much of the oil for parts of Asia. So what we wanted to do was get Vladimir Putin out of the energy business, and so that Eastern Europe would not be relying upon Vladimir Putin. Well, when Trump got back in office, one of the things he did was he lifted the sanctions on Russian oil. So now Vladimir Putin is free to sell oil to pretty much anyone he wants to, which only creates competition for U.S. oil companies that want to sell oil in Eastern Europe and throughout Asia. So we don't need, at this point, we could lower the price of oil. We could take some of the oil that we're shipping abroad and use it right
Make
here in this
it.
country to drive the price down. But the energy companies are seeing that Americans are willing to pay it. And as long as we're willing to pay it, the price goes up incrementally, from day to day. You drive past the gas station and you see that the prices change almost daily and it's not coming down. They continue to go up. And one thing that really bothers me is the fact that Americans, their attention span is very, very short. Memories, very, very short. 20 to 24 years ago, President George W. Bush told us that Iraq posed an existential threat to America, that Saddam Hussein had a cache of weapons, what he called weapons of mass destruction. He went on to say that the next attack in this country could be a mushroom cloud, you know, insinuating that Saddam Hussein had a nuclear device. Well, after all of the death, all of the destruction of, we're talking a an ancient civilization. This is Mesopotamia. All the death, all the destruction, all of the money that was spent fighting these wars, we found not a single weapon of mass destruction. Fast forward, Donald Trump is using the exact same playbook that George W. Bush used to get us into the Iraq War, telling us that there's an existential threat to America, knowing full well that Iran does not have nuclear capability. If Iran wanted to acquire a nuclear weapon, they could have bought nuclear weapons from North Korea. They could have bought them from China. They could have bought them from Russia. Iran has the financial means. They produce how much oil per year? They have the money if they wanted to purchase nuclear technology. They never wanted to. The Ayatollah said it violates the Quran. It violates Islam. Islam means peace. So
That's
Iran
right.
never wanted a nuclear device. But here we are with these short attention spans and not learning from the lessons of history. Here we are again in another disastrous war, a war that we're not winning, a war that has only emboldened Iran and other nations who are looking at this disaster and saying, why am I afraid of America? They can't even beat Iran. And it's America and Israel, and Iran is beating both of them strategically and economically by holding the Strait of Hormuz hostage.
Mhm.
We're not learning anything.
All right. On that note, we're gonna take a little quick 30-second little break, and then we'll come back. But on the other side, I got a couple of questions that I want to ask you too. I like to put forward too, just about this administration. In which direction do you think we need to go as a people? I'll be right back. You can check them out. They're at, I guess you can go to Wolfpack Instagram. On Instagram, wolfpack.com. They sell women's and men's sporting apparel. Go ahead and check them out. All right, let's get back to the show. Yo, all right, brother. So I put a question forth to you. What did you think? What kind of answer did you come back with? What direction do you think we need to be going as a people? Here right now is to what is it that we can do to make some changes?
Well, that's a complex question, right? And there's many avenues that we should explore. One of the things that I think we should not do is marching. I think that marching served its purpose many decades ago, I don't think it has the same effectiveness as it did, in the 50s and 60s. And that's because there was more cohesion. When Dr. King announced this boycott in Montgomery, and the information was disseminated through the churches, people did not ride the buses. Today, we have so many people that are simply not going to get on the same page with us. And I think that because of that, probably what we need to do is small groups in your community, right? Pretty much every organization, every group starts out with just a core group of people. And I think we just need to find core groups of people who are going to work within the community to try to, I guess, raise people's level of consciousness. Because let's be realistic, we're in for a fight. And again, this is not just about the right to vote. This goes well beyond that. This goes to, at the heart of this, is your existence, our existence, the existence of Black people, not just here, but on this planet. Because it's not just about what you see the Trump administration doing. There are other threats. There was a ship out at sea off the coast of Tenerife, and we were told that people had developed this deadly virus, the hantavirus. Well, it was supposedly contained on the ship. Now, all of a sudden, there's 41 people in this country that have the hantavirus that were nowhere near that ship. Could this be the next COVID outbreak, the next global pandemic? Now we have an outbreak of Ebola. We've never had Ebola in this country. Now they're saying it poses a global risk. And where's this Ebola outbreak? In Congo, in a mineral-rich part of Africa. And they're saying that the threat may be coming to this country. So let's be realistic. There was a doctor who worked on Dr. Fauci's team when they were researching COVID. She wrote a book, and she also did a number of lives where she said the Ebola virus could not harm a human being until we took it into the lab. After experimentation, all of a sudden, this former harmless antigen is now a deadly virus that kills people, causing hemorrhagic fever, where people literally bleed to death. So if you look at it from a global perspective, this is a multiphasic attack, right? And when you talk about voting, okay, voting has its place, but we've got to find people who are willing to fight, not talk about fighting, but who are going to fight for our survival, our right to vote, our right to exist, our economic freedom, and reparations. And who's going to do that? We trust the Democratic Party to do it, but have they done it thus far? What have they delivered?
I'm still waiting for this reparation. I think it's ridiculous that here we are, 2026, and we're still talking about reparations. We're still talking about how we need to come together as a community. I mean, back in '65, I got you. Now, I mean, just to be for real about history, even during that time of the marches, all of us really did not come together. Martin Luther King wasn't accepted in all the churches, and neither was Malcolm X. Was he allowed to come into certain places because of his beliefs? Everybody wasn't down with the cause, but it was enough of us that was down with the cause where we had that monolithic view as to where we wanted to end up as a people. And that's what kind of got us over the hump. So as you were saying, that the small portions of us, the community, the little NAACPs that get together, the little Jack and Jills that get together, all these different organizations. So some of them are larger than others, but primarily it's a small portion when we talk about the whole picture of the country. But these people who will help other people who will get engaged to do just that, maybe voting. But maybe we need to, again, these politicians, if they want to get in office, they really need to come through us. And the way we get to meet them is through town hall meetings. And because a lot of the things that I noticed that these guys do, they do the fundraisers. So only certain people are going to show up at the fundraisers. So now those people that show up, those are their constituents. So the only problems they know are those people problems. They don't know anybody else's problems. The people who don't have that $2 or $3 or $5 to come and say, here, I can contribute to your fundraiser. Some of the politicians forget about those people. And those are actually the majority of people. And this is when we say we need to come together as the people. Well, there it is, and then we'll have some ammunition to fight with. But it's hard to get people engaged, especially when money is on the table, especially when it comes to a politician listening to you or listening to that person that's funding his campaign. Okay?
And that's always been the problem, right? In this country, it's always been about money, power, and control, right? We talk about this country being a democracy. I have my doubts. When did we become a full democracy? At what point? Are we a democracy now, right? You want to talk about democracy? Well, from what I understand, the majority rules. If the vast majority of people believe that a motion should carry, well, they say that is democracy in action. Well, isn't that what happened down in Virginia when Virginia voted to redistrict? And the Supreme Court said, no, we're going to now basically discard the will of the people, and we're going to rule against this redistricting. Why didn't they rule against the redistricting in Louisiana or Texas or Mississippi or Alabama? Why in Virginia? So what we have is a government that is openly hostile, and not just to black people. They're hostile to brown people. They're hostile to immigrants. They're hostile to women. They're hostile to the LGBTQ community. And it's getting worse every day. Just yesterday, 2 teenage boys opened fire at a mosque in San Diego, California. Where did that level of hatred come from? We're talking somebody 17 and 19 years old, guys that maybe never been on their first date, but they want to shoot up a mosque. And why? What is the mentality in this country that we want to go and kill other Americans because they pray differently or they speak a different language?
I can tell you, 1965, Ku Klux Klan, right? They came into play, right? Those cats are still here today, man. And guess what? They had kids. So what ideology do you think that they teach their children? Okay, I mean, those guys, they're the same age as me. So if I'm still here, they're here, and some of the ones that's older than me are still here. They got kids and grandkids. So what philosophy are you think that these people are learning and teaching to their own children? They're teaching them how to hate people that look like you and I. It's a never-ending cycle. And then we get together and we start to teach each other about hating each other. Start hating ourselves because of who we are.
But something Dr. King said. Dr. King said, you cannot legislate morality. So, we can vote, but it's not going to change the hatred. It's not going to change the fact that people in this country are armed to the teeth. And when we talk about the fact that, I think it was the imam of the mosque said that, it's horrible that people do not respect houses of worship. Well, that's nothing new. Birmingham was called Birmingham for a reason. They bombed churches. They bombed religious institutions in the South because our God was not their God, right? Their heaven was not our heaven. So when you talk about voting, yes, voting has its place. But when people are willing to go into a house of worship, like they did yesterday, like they did several years ago in Mother Emanuel Baptist Church in Charleston, South Carolina, and gunned down 9 people who were praying, you've got to have more than just the vote. You've got to have a mechanism to protect yourself, to protect your community, protect your woman, protect your children. You've got to have something in place. You know what I
You know,
mean?
it's funny. Every time we start something like that, it becomes where we become the terrorists. So we talked about the Ku Klux Klan. Now, nobody in big government ever called them or labeled them as a terrorist. And the things they did was terrorize people left and right. So we had an organization. We called the Black Panthers. Now, the Black Panthers, they were there to help protect your community, to help to protect the queens in our community, to get the drugs out of our community, to start educational programs within our community, to go and help fight for us in government, because they were a political party. This is what people don't understand. They were the Black Panther, but they were a political party, not a party of terrorism, not a party of violence, because they walked around with rifles, but they had no bullets in the rifles. So, I mean, we had the right to bear arms, but you couldn't have it loaded walking through the streets, supposedly at that time, right? So they didn't have any rounds in there. So they weren't about trying to kill people. They were trying about following the law to the letter. What was right for you, what was good for you, should be good for me. If you're able to protect your neighborhood without any people coming and messing around with you or wanting to kill you or call you terrorists or lock you up in jail, as long as you were able to, I should be able to do that as well. As long as you had police out here that was brutalizing and harassing and abusing the people within their community, well, we had that, what do they call it, checks and balances, because these brothers would step in and say, hey, no, you can't do that. So what was wrong with them? And honestly, I really wish that we could have an organization or communities back like we used to have. Remember, we used to have the block association, and we had all these different community associations that if you had problems in the community, you could go to the block association. They would return, if it was something political or legislative, they would bring it to those people and make sure that things got taken care of. Even in the projects, we had an association in the projects so we could make sure the buildings were kept clean and that we had police that would come and patrol. So what do we have now? Because it doesn't seem like we have anybody that does these things now. And everybody else can come into our neighborhood and do whatever. They can kill us. They can label us. They can do whatever. By being black, we're criminals. I mean, everything negative towards us. What do we do?
Well, you struck a point when you said that we had the Block Association. We had people that would get together to maintain the sanctity, the peace and civility of the projects. But the answer is we did that. We didn't rely on somebody from downtown, from some agency or some, civic organization. We did it ourselves, right? And what we as Black people have been doing for centuries now, we are begging people to do for us what we can do for ourselves. That was one of the key points of the Black Panther Manifesto. Self-determination. We don't want to rely on the government. We don't want your handout. Give us what our ancestors worked for, and then let us chart our own path. That's what we've done. Following slavery, we went out and we built successful cities and towns. We had the Black Wall Street, right? We have the ability, and nobody helped us. We built those towns and cities brick by brick with our own hands, our own ingenuity. And that's what we have to rely on now, ourselves, because we can't rely on anyone else to do for us what we have the God-given ability to do for ourselves. And let me just say this, when you talk about the legislation that was written and signed that was supposed to normalize relationships in this country between what's called white people and Black people. Well, the reality is anything a man gives you, a man can take back. When you purchase a home in this country, you don't purchase the home, you purchase the rights to that home. And if you don't pay your property taxes, your rights can be revoked. And that's the same thing that happens. Abraham Lincoln says men are born with certain unalienable rights. They don't come from the White House. They don't come from the halls of Congress. God gives us certain rights. But the problem is we're relying on the government to tell us what we can do, when we can do it, how we can do it. The government is not God, but we're allowing government to stand in the place of God. Like you saw Trump with his meme where he's got a beam coming out of his hand and he's got his hand on some man's head like he's raising him from the dead. Well, that is the concept some people have of not just Donald Trump, but the government, right? And the reality is, no, the government is not God and God is not government. We have rights that the Creator gave us that are unalienable, that the only way they can be taken from us if we surrender them. And unfortunately, we have waved the white flag. Not just Black people, all of us in this country have waved the white flag. And every 4 years, we get angry at one party, we go vote in the other party. And then 4 years later, we're mad again, and we vote out that party and vote the other party right back into power. And we wonder why nothing happens because we waved the white flag.
And that's why I said we need to start to vote with our heads, which means we got to do a little bit of research before we say yay or nay. And it can't be something that you feel is personal or your moral compass. You know, you got to kind of put that stuff away when you vote, because you're not just voting for yourself. You're not just voting for your own interests. You're voting for your entire community, everybody around you. This is who you're voting for. You're voting for the resources that you may need within your community. That's the whole idea of politics, is to say where our resources are going to be distributed. And that's mostly the most important thing when it comes to me. I need to know that my schools are going to get paid for within my community. I need to know that there's going to be enough money in my community. I need to talk about the jobs in my community. I need to talk about the housing in my community. We got people that are homeless. Here we're giving billions of dollars and trillions of dollars away to other countries, but we got people right here that are homeless. I want to deal with situations that truly affect us. They want to make America great again. Let's make America great. Just make it great, period. No again, because like I keep telling you, I don't know when a time period for us that was so great, but we need to make America great. And the only way we're going to do that is through community. Again, I keep going back to Huey P. Newton. He had the right idea. All of us got to be on the same boat. We got to be monolithic when we coming at these politicians. We got to look at what we need, to how we're going to raise our families, the food, all of those things that we need to survive as a people, Black people, white people, Chinese people, regardless, but as a people, because the way it's going now, man, we're going to be bankrupt like he does every other business, right? We're going to be bankrupt. All the money's going to other countries, and he's going to walk away scot-free with a pocket full of load of money like he does. Maybe some of his other little people that what do you call it, that help him out on a regular basis, maybe some of them will go to jail, right? But the majority of them won't. They'll slip and slide, like Giuliani and the rest. They'll just slip and slide, and he'll slip out. He'll slip out with billions of dollars, him and his family, of our money, and then turn around and tell us that he can't look out for us as a people.
Well, here's a news flash. When you talk about things like jobs, healthcare, when you talk about education, all those are wonderful ideas. All those are wonderful programs. But I can tell you right now, Trump said himself, there's no money for that. He said he's fighting a war. Well, all of the money's not going to the war. That money, as I said before, is being fleeced. The American people are being fleeced. There is no money for those programs. There is no money for job creation. There is no money for healthcare. There is no money for Social Security. That money is gone and it's not coming back. The reality is billions of dollars every day. We borrow billions of dollars every day. These countries are buying our debt with the hope that one day they'll recoup their losses. We are so far in debt, we can never pay down, forget the principal, we can't even pay down the interest. Right now, we're falling behind on the interest payments. Before long, this country will have to declare bankruptcy. We're already there. We just haven't said the word out loud yet. But what is being said out loud is what Trump is saying. He's saying the quiet part out loud. He said today, the DOJ just said that they have barred the IRS from auditing him, his family, his businesses forever. It's over. They can audit you, but they cannot audit the man who is robbing this country of billions and trillions of dollars.
You know, I tell you, I'm gonna say it this way and say it real fast. Some bullshit, man. I mean, really.
Well,
man.
it is.
I mean, me as a regular citizen, they done took away my power to go bankrupt. Remember back in the 70s, 80s, pretty much everybody can go bankrupt, but they took that power away from us. But these guys can still do it,
right?
And make a lot of money, walk away with a lot of money, man. I mean, look, I'm really tired of living or having it where the billionaires, they pay less taxes than me, and I'm retired, okay? And they're just making money hand over fist, man. I complain about, I don't know, little things like paying property tax. Like, damn, man, I'm well over 60. I'm plus in my 60s, damn near into my 70s. When am I going to be able to stop paying this property tax and actually own my own property? Because as long as I'm paying property tax, I don't own my property. The government does. Okay, because if I don't pay, they'll put a lien on it and take my house. So when are we going to get our breaks back? Tax
We're
break,
not.
anything.
We're not. Since the 1980s, there began the largest redistribution of wealth from the lowest 90% to the top 10%. That has been going on since the 80s, and it's only picked up steam over the years. And with Trump, this train is running at full speed in terms of wealth redistribution. The money's not just, the money's going to the top 1% and to the Trump family. His sons right now, his son signed a lucrative contract to provide, of all things, arms. So daddy starts a war, and now the sons are providing arms, and you don't see a conflict of interest there. So what is being done, he's not trying to hide it. He's showing you what he is and who he is. And yet we still have people in this country who will defend him. Not that his actions are defensible. So what they'll say is, well, what about Biden? And what about this one? And what about that one?
Don't you hate
well,
when
a
they
lot
say
of people, well, yeah, a lot of people at this point are like, okay, what about Biden? Right now, I don't have a job. And I can't go to the Biden administration because it doesn't exist anymore. It's the Trump administration that promised me a job, that promised me health care, that promised me that America would be great, that I would be prosperous. It wasn't Biden. It was this man that I elected. And now I have less than nothing. So for these folks,
he promised he wouldn't be going to war. Didn't he say no more wars? We're not going to go to war.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And like I tell you, brother, I'm honestly telling you, I don't know when this war is going to be over with. I'm telling you, I think this war is going to last a minute or two. It's lasted longer than what it's supposed to have lasted. And now that the Netanyahu, he's putting some more pressure on him, so he wants to have boots on the ground. So they don't just want to stop them; they want to take over. They want to conquer.
But you know what? This isn't a war we need to worry about. Did you hear what Xi Jinping said to Trump? He gave him a stern warning as it relates to Taiwan. He said, if you're going to provide arms for Taiwan, then it may lead to a conflict between our two nations. If America can't beat Iran with the help of Israel, how the hell are you going to beat China? And if China's drawn in, doesn't that bring in North Korea?
And Russia?
And possibly Russia, who has been assisting Iran. And Trump lifted the sanctions on Vladimir Putin. Not only did he do that, after a contract or an agreement was on the table signed by several nations and the Obama administration to end the threat of Iran obtaining a nuclear device, Trump tore it up. Now he's trying to negotiate that very same agreement that was already on the table. And he's costing the taxpayers billions of dollars in the process. And then he tells them, I don't think about your finance. And yet you still have people that will say, what about Biden?
Yep. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna pick up this conversation on the next go round, probably next week on Tuesday. That sounds like a good time. Well, yeah, you know when we're gonna pick it up again, so we'll do this again. My name is Kendall Stevenson. This is my brother Ronald Yates. But what I would like to say is, what's going on in Cuba? It's kind of like I don't know. Why are they starving a whole bunch of people? Because they're pissed off at the regime. So they're going to starve the entire country. So everybody in the country should have to suffer. And
You
just
know
like what
what?
I read, I'm pissed off at the regime, but I'm going to kill everybody in the entire country. Isn't that a little barbaric and
Well,
draconian
Trump
kind
is
of thing?
Trump's a barbarian, and there's no rhyme or reason to his decision making. Cuba poses absolutely no threat to America. Never have, never will. But Trump is just looking at points that he can point to on the map and use it as a distraction. There are no American interests in Cuba right now, save some, some businessmen that went down there and bought up some Cuban farmland. I don't know if they're doing anything with it, but there were no interest in Cuba for the United States. So, Trump is just looking for ways to distract. And the fact of the matter is, the Epstein files are not going to go away. No matter how many wars he may start, no matter how tough he talks, the Epstein files is like an ever-present thorn in his side that's simply not going to go away. Even though he got rid of Senator Cassidy in Louisiana, and now he's got Thomas Massey of Kentucky in the crosshairs. And these guys, Cassidy voted to impeach him. He committed impeachable offenses. Well, Thomas Massey voted to release the Epstein files in their entirety. So because of that, he wants him gone. Trump says he's not in the files. He's never been Epstein Island. So if that's the case, why are you so hesitant to release the files?
Well, we know what's going on. So what we're going to do, people, is we're going to pick this up next time. And we, again, like I said, thank you guys very much for tuning in. This is Politricks. I'm Stevenson, always hanging out with my brother Yates. I'd like to say peace. And everybody, you got to be yourself because everybody else is taken. My man Yates, he would always tell you hotel and hotel.
Hotel.
We're out. Hotel. Peace.
Peace.
Welcome to the Empire One Show, when knowledge meets action. Yeah. We break down barriers to financial literacy. Speak truth to power, real conversations. Voices that inspire change, challenging the status quo. Tools for building wealth, taking control. Your future starts right now. This is the Empire